Hello and welcome to the Mystical Times blog podcast with me, Michelle Eve. On this episode, I will share with you some of the strange sightings of the man in the black hat that has been seen in particular streets of the city of Bath. Bath is a historic city in Somerset, southwest England, nestled in the valley of the River Avon, surrounded by limestone hills and designated greenbelt land. It's famous for its natural geothermal hot springs, which have drawn visitors for millennia. Bath was founded by the Romans around 60 AD, and as you can imagine, the city has a deep and rich history, and also of the people who made this city their home. So who was this ghostly figure in the wide-brimmed hat? Here are some of the witness reports from the Book of Local Ghosts by Margaret and Ian Girvan. An apparition of the man in a black hat. The man in the black hat apparition has been seen on the city streets and has been described as wearing a black hat with some sort of long dark cloak. The sightings have happened on the streets of Savile Row, Bennett Street and Russell Street, which is near to the Bath's assembly rooms. One of the most detailed witness accounts came from Mrs. Cynthia Montefiore, and her account was reported in the Bath Evening Chronicle from March 16th, 1950. She was reported to say,
"I was walking from Portland Place to George Street. When I reached the end of Savile Row, a man approached me from the corner of the department store of Evans & Owens. He wore a large black hat, rather resembling the old-fashioned Quaker hat. He crossed the road but made no noise and was walking towards me, so I started walking at a faster pace to reach the end of Savile Row. There was no one else around, and it was then that I had the feeling that this man in the black hat is odd and unearthly. I had a peculiar sinking feeling in my stomach, but I wasn't frightened, as I have an interest in the occult not to feel afraid of this figure. As he passed me, I turned around immediately, as my curiosity was piqued and I wanted to see the back of him, but he had completely vanished. He certainly had no time to enter a doorway, as not 2 seconds had passed from the time he passed me until I looked back. I had a distinct view of him. He was small, thin, and walked with a stoop."
Another witness account of this figure came from a Mr. Emmett, who had once been a regimental sergeant major and had been the caretaker for the assembly rooms. He was stoking the boiler in the boiler room when he felt as though he was being stared at. He turned towards the doorway and saw a male figure in a long black cloak with a large brimmed hat. As Mr. Emmett tried to make sense of what he was seeing, the figure just disappeared in front of his eyes. There are 4 witness sketches of this entity. The first image is of the ghost seen in Savile Row, and this was drawn by the witness Mrs. Harrison, a resident of Bath. The second sketch is of the man seen in Bennett Street by Mrs. Dixon, who was visiting the city of Bath. The third sketch of the man, who was also seen on Bennett Street and was drawn by a resident in Bath. The last sketch was drawn by the witness of the first account in this episode, a visitor to Bath, a Mrs. Eileen Parish from Wootton under Edge, home of the haunted ancient Ram Inn, also witnessed this strange entity. It was in the summer months in the early 1970s that Mrs. Parish had her encounter with the man in the black hat. She went on to say,
"I was trying to park my car opposite the Evans & Owens department store, and I saw this male figure walk down Savile Row, then step into the road, hesitate, turned back and began to walk towards the front of the assembly rooms. I took my eyes off him for mere seconds, and when I looked again, he had vanished. It was impossible for him to have reached the end of the road within that time. He was dressed very much like Guy Fawkes and, as he turned, his black cloak swirled out around him. He seemed to have black breeches and gaiters on. I must admit that I never thought of him as a ghost, which is strange as I've had many ghostly experiences and can usually tell if a place is haunted."
With so many sightings and descriptions of this intriguing figure in a black hat and cloak, I looked to see if there was any history of Quakers in the city of Bath, and there have been Quakers that lived in Bath since at least the mid-17th century, and an active Quaker community remains there today. Quaker presence in the Bath area dates back to the 1650s, with early records of arrests and imprisonments for their faith, two being Thomas Morford in 1655 and William Sargent of nearby Bathford. Although Quaker founder George Fox did not visit Bath itself, meetings were held in private homes in Bath and Bathford by the early 18th century, and a dedicated meeting house existed in the city in Merchant's Court, now part of Northumberland Place. The 17th century meeting house was demolished in 1808, and its successor was sold in 1866. The former Quaker meeting house was located in Merchant's Court, a site of the High Street in central Bath, which, with Bath being a walkable city, is nearby to the Assembly Rooms. Could this figure be a Quaker from centuries ago, still walking about the city where he lived, and where he felt at home in observing his faith? That's all for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed hearing those witnesses' accounts of the man in the black hat. If you have witnessed this entity, then please email me with your account, spooky@mysticaltimesblog.com. For the next episode, episode 39, I'll share with you some very ghoulish happenings in Gloucestershire. Till next time.